Greetings! Welcome to Saint of the Week, the show where we choose one saint's feast day from this week and discuss their life and their impact on the church. The saint for this week is St. John of the Cross, whose feast day is December 14th, this Thursday.
John was born on June 24th, 1542, in Fontiveros, Spain. His parents were poor silk weavers, and his father died when he was only 3 years old. 2 years later, his oldest brother Luis died, and his mother took John and his other brother Francisco and moved to Arevalo. They did not stay there long, moving again in 1551 to Medina del Campo, where John's mother found work weaving.
John received his primary education at a school for poor children, which taught mostly Christian doctrine, while also providing some food, lodging, and clothing. He was an adept student, but when he was an apprentice to an artisan, he seemed unable to learn anything. Because of this, he began working at Medina's hospital, spending his days caring for the poorest of the poor and visiting a school built by the newly established Jesuits.
On February 24th, 1563, at the age of 20, John entered the Carmelite order, taking the name John of St. Matthias. He was sent to Salamanca for higher studies and was ordained a priest in 1567. He had a growing desire to join the strict Carthusian order, attracted to its charism of silent and solitary contemplation. He journeyed back to Medina and met the Carmelite nun Teresa of Avila, who was in the city to establish a new convent.
Teresa told John of her plans for reform in the Carmelite order, wanting to return to the original strict and rigorous rule. She convinced him to delay his entry into the Carthusians, and to help with her endeavors. John studied another year at Salamanca, and then in August of 1568 traveled with Teresa to Valladolid, where she was going to establish another convent. He stayed with her for a while to become familiar with the way of life, and then left Valladolid to establish a monastery for monks following the same principles.
John established his monastery at Durarello on November 28, 1568, and on that same day he took the name John of the Cross. Just a few months later, the friars found the house too small, and so they moved the community to the nearby town of Mancera de Abajo. John moved on from the community to found two more, and in 1572, at Teresa's request, he went to Avila to become the spiritual director and confessor to the nuns at the Monastery of the Incarnation.
In the years from 1575 to 1577, there was a great rise in tension between the unreformed Carmelites and those who followed the reforms of Teresa and John, called Discalced Carmelites. A general chapter of the Carmelite order was convened in Piacenza, Italy, in May 1576, to determine the fate of the reformers. And in fear that the situation would get out of control, it was decreed that all Discalced houses must be suppressed.
The order was not carried out immediately, as the Discalced Carmelites were supported by both King Philip II of Spain and Spain's papal nuncio, Niccolo Ormaneto. After the nuncio died, however, John no longer had protection, and on December 2, 1577, a group of Carmelites opposed to his reforms broke into his house and took him prisoner. He was taken to Toledo and jailed inside a tiny, narrow cell that was barely big enough for his body.
Even as John was greatly mistreated for the time he was in prison, he wrote some of his greatest poetry while he was there. He managed to escape after 9 months on August 15, 1578. Some of Teresa's nuns helped nurse him back to health, and he continued with his reforms, requesting that the Pope firmly separate the Discalced Carmelites from the rest of the order.
John's request was granted by Pope Gregory XIII on June 22, 1580. At the first general chapter of the Discalced Carmelites in 1581, John was elected as one of the definitors of the order, and he wrote a set of constitutions for them. Over the next several years, he moved from place to place, founding and presiding over many different monasteries.
In June of 1591, after a falling out with Father Nicholas Doria, Vicar General of the Discalced Carmelites, John was moved from his post in Segovia to the isolated monastery of La Penuela. He became sick there and traveled to Ubeda for treatment, but his condition worsened and he died there on December 14, 1591, of erysipelas. He is a patron saint of contemplatives, mystics, and Spanish poets.
John of the Cross lives up to his name in the way that he embraced the hardship that he came across so frequently in his life. He understood what an honor it is to suffer with Christ, and all through his life he lived out Jesus' words, "Take up your cross and follow me." He was both a theologian and a poet, and his writings have earned him the title of Doctor of the Church.
Saint John of the Cross, pray for us. Our honorable mentions for this week are
Blessed Adolf Kolping, Saint Damasus I, Saint Finian of Clonard, Blessed Mary Frances Xavier, and Blessed Honoratus Cosmensi.
And of course, there are thousands of other saints who undoubtedly have their feast days this week, but there are so many of them that there is no way we could list them all here.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Saint of the Week. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Peace be to you.